Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts, and we are talking about finding joy in midlife. And I am so excited to have these three young, wonderful women back to talk with us tonight. Dr. Ginger Featherstone is here. Ginger, how are you?
I'm fabulous. Thanks for having me.
So glad that you're back for this. Dr. Mary White is here. Mary, how are you?
I'm doing great. Got caught in the rain today, but that's okay. Rain kind of brings me joy.
Like there you go. It's part of the fun of living in Florida. Those pop-up showers that basically happen every day now during the summer. And Kristen Giesland, the mindful seer, is here. Kristen, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for asking.
Appreciate you
And
being
I'm
here. So
excited.
we had a conversation. I'm sorry?
I'm excited to be back for the second conversation of this basic group here.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So we had a conversation a little while ago about empowered women in their third act and how all these wonderful women were being so successful at this time in their life. And we're back to talk about that again tonight. And so the concept here tonight is finding joy in midlife, or cultivating and celebrating joy in this midlife time. Midlife we have defined as being sort of anywhere from the 30s to the 70s or whatever. It's that time where usually a lot of people finish a career, make a change of life, something new happens. It's that third act of your life that can be so wonderful, where you cultivate all of the stuff that you have learned and harvest it and use it in your life in great ways. So since we already introduced ourselves last time, we won't do that now. But Kristen, you came with this topic and I thought it was wonderful. We were trying to figure out, let's get this group back together. Tell me about why you want to talk about finding joy.
Well, actually, it was Jackie Gilly who couldn't make the conversation tonight, who inspired me, because she put up a post about joy. And I thought, yeah, joy, and I wanted to sink my teeth into that a little bit more. And then simultaneously, how the universe works, the messaging around joy started coming in, like for two or three, from two or three other sources. People were talking about it. People were making posts about it. And I just feel like sometimes the universe wants us to focus on something to sort of like restore balance. And so that's why I thought, this is a topic of conversation. And, I think, oppressed people across time have become experts at how to hold, create joy, hold joy, maintain joy, celebrating their lives. And now it's sort of like an opportunity, with the current way things are in the world, for the rest of us to get really good at that too.
You're not kidding.
I was just thinking that's such a powerful moment to think about how, different groups in our current society are having to reach out and find joy. And sometimes people think, well, like, oh, I don't need to find joy. Well, we do. If I turn on my computer, it sucks the joy out of me. And I think that it's really important to even recognize what that means to you. What is joy, and how do you find it? So I love that, Kristen. Thank you.
So perhaps we start by defining our terms, because I feel like our society doesn't use the word joy much anymore. I feel like we use happiness and contentment and success and things like that. But I think joy is a term that is really, really important. Mary, you and I talked a lot about joy in our whole series on finding joy in midlife. Do you want to start by maybe helping to define the terms?
Well, this is really tough, Tim. Just an aside story. Tim and I once dressed a color guard as Joy from Inside Out, because we love that character so much. Not that it matters, but Joy always makes me think of that character from Inside Out. And Tim and I loved her little dress so much that let's dress a color guard just like that. And so to me, I mean, that joy in midlife, or just joy, period. To me, joy is something that brings a smile to your face, something that, engages you in a different way, something that says, this makes me happy. And it could be small, it could be large. It doesn't have to be this gigantic thing. Is that what you mean, Tim? Like defining?
Yes. I would like each of us to sort of speak to this just to start the conversation. So Ginger, do you want to add anything to that?
So for me, when I think of the word joy, I don't necessarily define it. It's more of a feeling. and moments in time that I find some deep joy. Like I know I walk in my house at Christmas time, I see my Christmas tree, I have joy. It just makes me feel good inside out, if that makes sense. When I see my grandchild, I cannot tell you what joy brings to me there. Like it's a sense of inner peace in a way. It really is. It's something that makes you feel so good about what you're doing that you have joy in doing it. So I don't think it has to be things, but sometimes things bring you joy. You know, my Christmas tree brings me joy. My grandson.
Your Christmas.
Yeah. Tablescaping brings me joy. There are things that I do that I feel like they put me in a place where I am happy with what I'm doing. And as Mary says, it brings me joy when I do my tablescaping. So I think we all have a different way of doing that. And sometimes maybe it's stress relief.
Yeah, we could really use some of that. I mean, just in general today. Yeah. Okay, now Kristen has to define it, Tim.
I feel like for me, it feels like a fountain. Okay. In terms of like, if I had to describe the way it is for me energetically, it's like it comes up from down low and comes up like that, you know, and out. And it's like, it's almost like I feel like you can't chase joy, that you have to court joy, like courting serendipity. And I feel like sort of the choices that I've been making for a while, since I'm a little more grown up now at 61, there's more like things that have sort of been set up, maybe started to get set up 15 years ago or 20 years ago, that are now coming to fruition. And then, you know, I see that I made good choices, even if it's just like I have a much better relationship with my adult child than I had with my 15-year-old child, you know, and, you know, things like that, you know, where you're like, oh, we're really hitting a groove here now, you know, all kinds of communication and exchange and realness is going on. And it's like, wow, you know, when you're in those teen years, you're like, you know, just let me survive. And so for it to be completely, you know, rewarding now, you know, with very few bumps and just pretty much on the, you know, additive zone and that connection is just brings me joy every time it happens. And yeah. And then, you know, also like I get really happy to see like when people are growing. I noticed this today, like there's somebody in my Facebook feed that used to be kind of repressed and controlled and had been in a bad marriage. And I'm telling you, she is like night and day now. She's putting out her opinions. She's backing things up with logic. She's posting like a mad woman on her Facebook feed. I mean, this woman has found her voice. And I am like, yeah, you know, I love that. That really makes me excited. And it is a feeling of happiness, but it's deep, you know, I almost feel like joy is like a deep happy, you know, it's not like a floaty happy. And yeah, so that's a little bit of my take on what joy is, you know.
Really hard to define. I really love what you said about like inside out. Like you can feel joy on the inside, but you can get it out too. Like, you know, like the fountain overflowing or something like that. And I think people see your joy on the outside too. So
yeah,
it's really inside and outside.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very genuine, I feel like you can't fake joy. Like it's either happening or it's not happening.
That's true. Well, Tim, what's your definition?
Well, I want to come back to what you just said about, but I'll say for me, it's sort of, Kristen, you used the word deep, and that's the way I think of it. It's sort of like very organically deep within me and very natural. And the thing that's interesting about this to me is that I've started paying attention, like purposefully paying attention to what is really bringing me joy and when am I feeling it, as opposed to am I happy today or what's going on or whatever. But I know that there are times, especially when I'm helping someone, teaching someone something, that I feel that I just pure joy. When I was in Lisbon and I was eating a pastel de nata pastry, that was pure joy. And I wish I had that picture, because there's a picture of me and I look like a little 5-year-old boy sitting on the park bench. I was never so excited in my whole life. So I'm paying attention to what joy is. And I think that's part of, Kristen, why I like this conversation so much, because I feel like we don't think about it very much, or I think we tend to be so busy, or don't prioritize it, or aren't aware very much. So I like the idea of being aware of it and thinking about it, and then consciously choosing to try to give that to my life has made a difference for me the last year.
Like choosing joy.
Yeah, and choosing to go out and make sure I'm doing things in my life that bring me joy. It can't all just be work.
Yeah.
No.
That's a really important piece, that oftentimes we are so wrapped up in work, and that we feel that we have to find joy in work, instead of, it can be joy in work, but there's so much more outside of work that can bring us joy. That was really important, Tim. Thanks.
Well, and to give yourself permission
Yeah.
to do joy. And what you said a minute ago, Mary, that I want to go to, you talked about expressing it. I feel like sometimes our culture makes us self-conscious or afraid to show true, real, authentic joy, because somebody might think it's weird that I'm finding joy in this certain thing, or that I'm acting that out. I don't know. I feel like this sort of, you have to be cool and this is acceptable kind of thing. And I feel like I'm at the age where I'm over that.
There's a fear of being judged, maybe.
I don't think joy has to be big though either, and gregarious, and it doesn't have to be so outward. Joy can be little things too, and just like this inner moment where you're like, well, that just makes me so happy. That kid walking that woman across the street or picking up trash, that just makes me happy just for the moment. Like that makes me happy. Joyous.
I have that with flowers. Like, I am deeply into it. When I see a flower bud is coming, and they're starting to open, and, I've been in conversation with my different plants, this, like, the last few months, because I kind of had let them go for a while, and I had left my plants in the inside, and they did not like it. My daughter even said, Mom, these plants are not liking being in the house, and I'm like, okay, I got to get these guys back out in the sun. I had brought them in when it was cold in the winter in Florida, and they weren't enjoying, being in a non-natural environment inside. And I feel like they're my friends. Like, they give me so much energetic connection, and I love the colors, and I like paying attention to what's going on with them. And then they make beautiful things for me. It's like, oh, I can, it's such an easy relationship. It's a really easy relationship for me with the plants. I know for some people it doesn't work like that, but for me it is. And it's like the amount of energy that I have to give to get such a big reward is so worth it for me.
And what I like about what you just said is it's easy and simple. I mean, it might be some work involved in some tasks, but like, you're aware, this brings me joy, having these plants, watching them flower, doing the gardening process, all that. So again, it's just, you started to pay more attention, and now it's bringing you more joy again.
Love that. Like, you pay attention to little things.
Yeah. I think it's as simple as, even for me, going to the beach and sitting and taking a moment, breathing in. It kind of relates to what you were saying, Kristen, too. It's a moment of peace too that brings such joy. It's slowing down to have joy.
I'm sorry, I just had a coughing fit that did not bring any joy.
No fun.
I had a surprise thing like that last week. I was leaving a meeting at 8 p.m. last Thursday night, and I was on the beach, Indian Rocks Beach, and the sun was about to go down. And I'm like, okay, here's an opportunity. Are you going to go home, or are you going to go over to the beach and watch the sunset? And it was kind of a stormy sunset. And it was the bomb. It was so fun to watch. And other people were coming out and watching it too. And people were taking photographs. And I was so happy that it was 1 hour. It was just 1 hour, but it felt like a vacation, because I was just in my senses the whole time, listening to the, waves coming, and it was really low tide. And so the waves were, it was doing the gulf, the water sound, the ocean sound, but really gently. And then the sky was just fantastic. And there were dark clouds coming from behind, and pink and yellow. And I was like, wow, look how the pink and gray and yellow work here. I was really into it. And so I did take photographs, which is part of the fun for me, because that really draws me into the experience more. And then I posted those. I'm like, this was the, my entertainment, for the evening, was the sky show. So yeah, I realized, I don't know, when was it? A couple of months ago, maybe February-ish, that I had stopped doing some of those small things that really made a difference for me. I had stopped spending time outside early in the morning with the birds. I like to be with the birds and the frogs early. I'd stopped doing that. I was jumping right into making posts on Facebook and hustling, mindful seer, this, that. And I used to have a dog who would get me out in the evenings to watch the sunset frequently. And I don't have that dog anymore. So I hadn't been going to the sunset as often. And I thought, that was really good for me to have that block of time in the morning and the evening to kind of, shift into the day and shift down gear in the evening. So, I'm a lot more aware now of those things. And then I started getting information, like science information, about dopamine and cortisol and hormones. All these things happen with the light. And I thought, oh, okay. So my natural self, my, awakened self, knew what to do. And it was just that squirrel cage, person that got in charge for a while and stopped doing those things. And I was like, that's not working for me. And I can really feel a difference in like my digestion and just my overall wellness from spending that deliberately time in the morning with the birds. And sometimes it's hard because I am quite, ADD, and I want to get into the day and start making things happen, and all these ideas are flowing. But now I'm just telling myself, no, first you're going to do this, and then you're going to do this, and I'm trying to just slow the roll. And it's just turning out to be really worth it. It's not like something I didn't know intellectually. I had just gotten out of some of the better habits. And it did take a toll quicker than I would have thought, actually. So now that I see it going in the better direction, I'm like, wow, I'm really gaining a lot of value, even from 20 minutes of meditation. It's not like I'm sitting there doing 2 hours of sadhana. I'm, 15, 20 minutes consistently. I can feel a difference in how everything is working. So, for me, that's also a joy giver. When I meditate, I experience everything in a different way qualitatively. I'm just more creative. I see the humor in things more quickly. It's like things move around. There's like more flow. I even noticed, if I was going to buy some new furniture, and then I was meditating, I was like, oh my gosh, all you have to do is switch where these two pieces are, and you're going to solve your problem. You don't need to buy anything. But, those pieces have been sitting like that a long time. And it wasn't until I was in that relaxed meditative state that my brain was able to go, oh, all you have to do is flip those and your thing's going to work. So sometimes I do feel like the answers are so simple, right in front of us, but we're so busy trying to chase, instead of being present, that we miss it. And that's kind of, I feel like joy is in that arena of, it can start to like slip out of the frame. It can start to slip, like we're all in these little frames here, like the Hollywood squares. The joy can start to slip out of the frame if we're not paying attention. And today, we know, like, all of the frequency healing stuff tells us that holding frequency is not only valuable for ourselves, but it elevates the collective. So, it's not just about the grind or being content creators or teaching and doing everything that's outward going. It's actually living, in a way that we are happy and we experience joy and we feel like, oh, I'm alive, So,
But
yeah.
that's also a conscious effort to, like saying, to find those moments that do bring you joy and put more of them, and find them and say, oh, I've got to spend time doing those things, you know, and that, that does take some effort, but it's very conscious. I mean, so,
Yeah.
and important.
Yeah, I think it's putting a priority to it, that it's important for my personal joy that I put that time in, that I go and see a sunset. For me, watching the sunrise and whatever it might be, that it's going to bring you that joy. I think that's beautiful.
That's called something. People who love the sunset or sunrise, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's called something.
Oh, there's
Yeah. I love them both. I think they're beautiful. Peace.
Well, but the nice thing I resonated with, Kristen. Well, I wrote down lots of notes from what you said. I loved what you just said, that whole thing. But giving yourself permission to take the time. And for me, sometimes I have to remind myself, you know what? That 10 minutes in the morning when I'm feeling like I need to go, 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 it's actually a productive part of my day, right? And so I think if you can remind yourself that it's not a waste of time, it's not moving slow, it's actually part of taking care of yourself and setting up your day for success. By the way, science does say that getting outside for at least 10 minutes of sun, natural light in the morning, and not through a window, but actually outside, it makes a huge difference. It's really beneficial. So, Kristen, of course, you said that, but I'm just going to reiterate that is sciencey. And I've started trying to take 10-minute walk or something in the morning when I'm, to get in the sun, get in some light.
Get those endorphins flowing.
I love it.
The other thing that I took notes, so I'll just keep going for a second if you guys are okay with that. You talked about rearranging pieces of furniture. It reminded me, I had a friend whose mother used to rearrange their living room like every 3 months. And I used to think that was crazy, and now I don't. Well, I don't know if I'd want to do it, but it freshened it all up. You know what I mean? Same pieces, just rearrange the furniture in your living room. I don't know if that's so easy now with TVs the way they are, but I like that idea. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
I think it's change. Sometimes change brings enlightenment and brings joy to you because, oh, look at this. I've got a brand new living room and you did nothing but move the couch. It is. And it also makes you happy. I think joy and happiness are so interconnected.
And that's like your tablescapes. If you don't know, creates these beautiful tablescapes on her dining room table, like for holidays and summer and the 4th of July, and they're beautiful. Look at them, it's like, oh, that's beautiful. That brings me joy, and you're taking the time to do it. And I'm sure it's not an easy task.
I enjoy it. I think it goes back to like Tim and Christian both said, it's like that time that I'm doing that is one, peaceful. I'm in my own element. I'm creating, and I have an end product. And when I look at it, I get to see it every day until I change it for the next style that I might be doing. And it does. It makes me happy. I see it when I come in every day. And then when I get tired of seeing that same design, so when I'm over lemons, then it'll be time to change it. It's lemons right now. Summer.
I love it. I do the New York Times crossword puzzle every day. It brings me great joy. It's like really taking time to do it. It takes not a long time, 9 minutes on a Monday, and then it gets successively worse, and sometimes up to 45 minutes to an hour on a Sunday. So, but it's still like that time where I'm relaxing, I'm enjoying it, I'm, kind of doing what I like to do, and I think looking forward to doing it. So just those moments we have to capture all the time.
I feel like as I'm older, I'm more conscious that this life doesn't go on endlessly, and so I'm more judicious. I started noticing this more maybe 5 or so years ago. that I started becoming more judicious and discriminating about what I was doing with my time and attention, because I was just more aware that the clock is ticking. So it's sort of like, it's now or never, get with what you want to be with, because, I mean, nobody really knows how much time they have left, but as you age, you have to start to set, have realistic expectations about how long you're going to be here. So, and of course, I think we talked a little bit about, for women, when we go through menopause, the estrogen drops and our manic desire to take care of everyone else is less. And, we actually start to, take care of ourselves and understand ourselves and our own needs. And so I think it can be a really interesting time of, yes, reinvention and reevaluation. And maybe sometimes the women that I work with have to go all the way back to like, what did they like when they were 7 or 8 or 11? Because they have been in so many roles for so many years of needing to do certain things, do work and take care of their husbands and their kids and their houses and all that they don't even remember what brings them joy. We have to do like a deep excavation to find out what even, do you even remember what brings you joy? And it's sad when I see that, but I don't think it's unusual, for women who are 50 years old or so to be like, okay, the kids are out of the house, they're in college, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully by the time, it's been another decade for me. I'm 61, I'll be 62 on my birthday in August. So, I'm more grooved into the things that I enjoy doing and hope to go more in that direction. I will say one thing that I think is really an interesting thing too, though. One time I was with my teachers in New York, and one of my teachers was doing some gardening stuff, which I noticed because I like that. And I said, "Oh, do you like to garden?" And she said, "I like to enjoy doing what needs to be done." And I was just sort of like, okay, that's some pretty lofty stuff there. And it helped me realize that sometimes I can make doing the daily things harder than they actually have to be. That if I shift how I approach what I'm doing, then there can be some space in it that allows it to be light, and maybe there's some joy there that I'm missing. So, like particularly, when I start to anticipate like administrative tasks, oh gosh, I'm just like, oh. But I always feel really good when I can check the box on, okay, administrative task 1 done, 2 done, 3 done. I'm like, oh, I'm a boss, So, but I don't think of that when I'm thinking of the list. I rarely think of how good I will feel once I get through 2 or 3 little admin duties. It's always like, oh my God, I really have to do that thing, like a teenager almost. So I can see there's space in my awareness to stretch, or open up to more joy frequency more of the time, just based on how I can approach different things in my life that aren't going anywhere. We're all going to have a certain amount of personal business to do until we're out. So might as well, be able to sort of expand that. In fact, I heard another person say that Joe Dispenza has an exercise where when you wake up in the morning, you remember, recollect, and go into a memory of when you were super happy or you were feeling a lot of joy. And the exercise is to continue to do that each morning and see if you can hold how much happy joy can you actually hold, without, flipping into whatever, other thoughts and ideas and, whatever else is going to creep in. But I thought, because we, magnetize and attract the frequency that we hold. So, I can see how valuable it is. And I feel like I kind of do that when I meditate, because I'm going to the Buddha realms when I'm doing that. But I thought, here's a whole nother way of doing it, And so I did go back and start thinking about times when I was like super, super happy. I wasn't really preparing for this, but I was thinking about stuff like that. Maybe I was sort of preparing for this, but I remember one time many years ago, I was with my daughter's father. This was before there was any daughters, a long time ago, and we had tickets to go to see the Grateful Dead in Miami. I didn't even know who the Grateful Dead were. I just knew it was a big deal, right? And my mom was coming into town that night, and it was like the only night she was going to be in town, and I hadn't seen her. And we were like, well, do you want to go to the Grateful Dead with us? And my mom was like 20 years older than me, and I was in my 20s. So she was like in her late 40s. And she said yes. So I remember feeling so happy to have my mom and my partner, and we're at this cool thing. And I knew that was exceptional. You know, in that moment, I'm like, this is rare to have my mom and my partner, and we're doing this cool event together. And so that was a mark, you know, that was one of the memories, you know, that came up for me when I was reviewing, you know, well, when are some times when I was just like, wow, you know, that was one of the times. And of course, you know, I'm so nerdy and, you know, I'm a spiritual nerd girl. You know, I didn't know anything about the Grateful Dead, but I was there for the experience, and I had a great time because the people I cared for were there with me.
It's such a good exercise that you're talking about, because I bet like those people that your work that you were talking about that I can't even remember what brings them joy, like
Oh
to
yeah.
kind of define those happy moments. I mean, I can define many, but I bet there's people that can't. And I just think, wow, that's sad. I mean, I I love that exercise where you just, really think about that. Also helps you be grateful, because I think often things that bring me joy are because I have worked hard to do something, like going on a trip. I have worked hard to be able to go on the trip, and this trip brings me joy. Planning the trip brings me joy. You know, being on the trip brings me joy. Being with friends on the trip or being with family on the trip, it brings me joy. And I think, like, I can think of so many, but I'm sad for people who can't think of many or don't have many.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think that it leads right back to that grateful, being grateful for what I have, what I've been fortunate enough to um, really create in my life and have those opportunities that many people don't. And it is difficult for them to find joy based on their circumstances as well. And I always thought that as a principle that, the 7.5 hours a day that the kids were in school was our opportunity for them to have moments of joy and really make it the best part of their day. Because some of them, coming to school was better than going home. And I think that that was my reality for a long time and how important it was.
And how incredible that you embrace that. I mean, not many people embrace that, to think in that kind of perspective, that, your job at school is to give kids joy like this. Many people do not remember their principal, do not remember joy in school, but, many people remember you. Noel, I never had a principal like you, Mary. No, they didn't even talk. I don't even remember their names. So it's such a good opportunity and a space, I think, in schools and with younger children, to bring them joy and teach them joy.
I agree. I agree. It's
Yeah,
a
that's
powerful
a
opportunity.
such a huge service that you did, Ginger Featherstone, of making, having the aspiration for the school environment to be joyful. Because what does that mean? That associates joy and learning. Okay. That's the most
Mhm.
important thing, because nobody's going to learn, when they leave you, they have to learn a whole bunch more stuff. But if they're interested and they like learning, then they'll be okay, So it's very, and just having the actual experience of a safe place that was
Yeah.
positive for those hours is ginormous. It's so huge. Yeah. I am a school lover myself. I mean, not every school environment, but I was somebody who I function better and understand. I like the amount of structure in school. That was easier for me than some other environments, and I was, I just understood the read, write, regurgitate routine. So I could get, I could get positive feedback from that loop, so I always pretty much liked school.
Esther and I did a project that brought such joy to me, to the community, such joy to both of our schools. It was an incredible project. Um, So I don't know if you want to set it up, Ginger, or
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, one of the things I really believed in is, you grow up thinking, because I was a high school principal, Mary was elementary, and high school kids, you don't read aloud, you don't do those things. That's an elementary thing. Well, we believed that doing a book read aloud every year or every other year. Every other year, we picked a book and we brought the author, and so we selected My Life as a Furry Red Monster, which is Elmo. And I reached out to Mary and I said, listen, we're going to be doing this. I would love to partner with you because her kids feed to my school. And I said, I just really feel like there's so many great opportunities where I could have my kids come to your school, teach your kids some of the parts of what it was to be Elmo and caring and how wonderful Elmo was. And we actually brought Kevin Clash and he spoke. And I will tell you, I will never forget, we had JD Parker, we bused the kids to Jensen Beach School. And one of the little boys was talking to Elmo and he was telling him that like he wasn't comfortable and kids weren't very nice to him. And Elmo brought him up on the stage. I still to this day just I wanted to hug that little boy. Elmo told him it was okay, and he gave him a big hug, and he let him know it was okay, and he even talked to him a little bit. And that little boy walked back, and he was standing up straighter than he did when he walked down there. And it was just really powerful opportunity for these kids to see big kids, little kids having joy in something that we did. And it was just really powerful. And I was really lucky that I had Mary that was like, yes, let's do this. And we did a lot of projects with them.
We made puppets. We wrote screenplays. We wrote
We wrote books. I still have the children's books they wrote.
We wrote children's books. Your kids came over and read children's books. I mean, it was like, quite an academic feat. And I just remember like only our 3rd through 5th grade could go. And during lunch, I said, well, my K through 2 kids are not getting this opportunity because, buses are expensive and whatever. He came to my school and met with every K through 2 student.
Yeah, brought him out. It was fabulous.
I don't know why I'm thinking of this story right now because it just brought me such joy. He hugged every single kindergarten through 2nd grade student. And that's like 320 kids at the time, maybe more, 350. I mean, it was joyous occasion.
It was. And really, Elmo is joy. When you think about Elmo, what do? Your heart kind of sings, right? And young and old. And it really was a powerful moment. And also it kind of reiterated in the brain that, giving kids also moments that aren't always given opportunities to have those moments. We have many children who've never seen the beach, taking them to the beach. They've never been to a theater. Take them to a theater, give them opportunities because they may find a new joy. And I always say, elementary kids, when they're in kindergarten, they're the most amazing artists. By the time they get to middle school, what are they? Oh, I can't paint, I can't draw, I can't do it. We've sucked the joy out of them. So my belief is stop sucking joy out. Let's push them back in.
Yeah, I mean, putting joy back in. I love that. And giving joy to all people, Ginger.
Yes.
I mean, setting, but I think there's a lot of joy that can be brought to workspaces or community spaces. And I think that's really important. Just being a decent, kind person to me brings me great joy because I see lots of people who aren't.
Yes. I think modeling it. I think that's, you set the space for that. So Kristen, setting the time and making a priority for you to do your morning, to do your evenings, you're modeling for also those who are around you of the importance of that and what it makes for you. It also shows it for those of us who are around you. Getting my frequency in check.
Yes, I actually noticed that one of the people that's kind of close to me, he's like a newer helper type guy. He's segueing out of a regular career into the help world. I made this big post of this guy, and then he did one like a couple days later. He did the same post, and I was like, oh yeah. So a lot of times, I'm sort of halfway between an influencer and a actually delivering services person. Sometimes, I'm not directly suggesting that people do a certain thing, but then they see it and they go, oh, that's cool. Or I like that. Or, somehow it communicates to them something and then they do it too, and like the flowers, I started getting myself inexpensive flowers at Publix years ago because a psychic that I went to said this is a way to boost the energy in your house. So Publix has flowers for $4 for a little bouquet. So I always have some fresh cut flowers. Well, another friend of mine saw my posts of that and she started doing it. She has more money to spend. So her bouquets are bigger. And yeah, exactly. It's like, but the point is it spread, and it was a nice thing that I thought, I'm going to do this for myself because I want the energy to be nice in my own area. And then, it spread around. So yeah, it is very cool. I noticed it could be something really small. Like usually I'm aware of what's going on with the door when I'm going in and out of a store or wherever I am. And sometimes it's better to hold the door for someone, than to jump through, whatever. And whenever I do that, people are just like, they're really happy. They're really surprised and happy that somebody noticed that they're coming through and they're a human being nearby. And these are not hard things to do, but we're also, if you're in your own zone and you're so focused on what you have to do next and all that, you might not notice. And there are times when I don't. But that is one thing that I don't know why, but especially that coming in and out thing. I do notice when people are trying to get someplace and I'm like, okay, let's see how we can all make this happen. Or if they have kids, sometimes people are, they're juggling and, just a tiny moment of awareness makes it flow better for everybody. And I get a lot of the fact that then they feel happy. It's like I do this one small thing and then they're like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, so it comes right back. It's like instant, that's an instant karma nice back to me. So yeah, it could be that small, exactly what you said at the beginning, Mary White. It could be just,
Small things add up to a big things. I mean, don't you think so? Like doing those acts of kindness, doing something for yourself, some self-care, reading a book, doing a puzzle. Like to me, all those things really add up to great joy. Like it's always small things in my mind. It could be big things like that project Ginger and I spoke about, where it was just joy abounding, everywhere, bouncing off the walls. But it's also sometimes very small things. Ginger and I also have a friend that every week goes to Trader Joe's and gets flowers. How she's parking lot, I don't know, but the parking lot.
I'm going to go there one of these days because I know I will find joy at Trader Joe's.
Oh, you will. And Ginger.
Yes, but I can't wait.
She gets flowers at Trader Joe's every week because it just brings her great joy, and it's such a little small thing. And she says they're also just $4 or $5. So
yeah, so worth it. Yeah.
Tim, you're muted. Boy, we haven't heard that since COVID.
Sorry, I muted myself. So I love what you guys are talking about, because I do think just going through the world with kindness and paying attention is a big deal. It really makes a difference for people, especially now. I feel like the internet was supposed to bring us closer, but what it's done is it's just put us all in our own little bubble. And I feel like most people are walking around their little bubble and not really in the world with everyone else. And so I feel like any time that you can have that act of kindness, interact with someone, Kristen, like you're saying, in a very simple way. You mentioned something in passing, Kristen, that you just sort of said in passing in your conversation, but like, I think a life well lived is important to everyone in the world. And I feel like if you are being successful and you are being joyful and you are finding joy and you're living a balanced life and you're being kind, that is a gift to everyone, even if it's just the vibrations going off into the universe or whether it's the people you happen to come into contact with. So I feel like we're talking about cultivating and finding joy in our own lives, but that is not selfish. This is a gift to everyone. It is an example to others that you run into. It's an example to your loved ones. It's an example to people you work with. So not to get too high-minded about it, but I do think it matters. And I do think a life well lived impacts everyone. And so this is really what we're talking about. It's not selfish to take that time for you. It's not selfish to cultivate joy in your own life, because that helps everyone. It's
a great gift, Tim, isn't it?
Absolutely. I I was on an errand on Friday that was very stressful. And I was literally standing in Staples trying to figure out how to get a copy machine to spit out a document that I needed. And some random 20-something-year-old guy walked by me and said, "Gosh, I love that shirt." And just kept going. And that was it. And I was like, what just happened? I mean, I liked the shirt I had on. I was like, but it was just like this very simple passing compliment. And you have to be careful how you do that these days, I think. But like I got so much out of that. And somehow maybe he sensed that I really needed a little kindness at that moment because I was in the middle of this very stressful thing. But it made all the difference. And I love when I can give someone a nice passing compliment just innocently. But Kristen, to your point, I feel like these things matter.
Yeah.
The joy we're feeling and sharing and the kindness we're feeling and sharing impacts the whole world. And so I don't think I think this is an important thing to be talking about.
Yeah, it's no small thing, even if it seems small.
Ginger and I, in our presentation last week, spoke about a ripple. You know, and how that ripple is so important to not only yourself, because you could be the drop, but also how it concentrically moves out and impacts other people along the way. It's hugely important to be the ripple, you know, to do that.
Yeah, where you drop things. In fact, my spiritual teachers, at one point, there was a woman in our group who had serious mental health problems. And instead of finding an institution for her, she had all the students take turns taking care of her for a really long time until it just became too difficult, you know, but for a long time. And I was like, I felt like that was a bigger picture thing. Like I felt like she wanted to make a drop, you know, that would ripple out. And, you know, if more people were spending a little more time taking a little more care of their people, there'd be less people in her shoes, you know. And I just sensed that it wasn't just about us. It wasn't just about our group. It wasn't just about this one particular individual woman. It was that my teacher wanted to create a wave pattern for the behavior, you know, into the collective at large. Yeah.
Hard.
And I guarantee you that the students that were engaged in that had just as much of an impact from participating in that, giving back, but gaining it as well. I think there's joy in knowing how much you made a difference in someone's life.
Yeah. I mean, it's like basically, you know, part of the message was just because someone is not functioning the way you are doesn't mean you just immediately cast them out of the community, you know, which is, you know, pretty common. So, yeah, it was like, I'm sure there's more that will be revealed. It's always like that with things from these teachers. It's like, you know, decades later, I more things occurred to me about, you know, the way things were handled and stuff. And it's like, ooh, yeah. Yep. So that expanding, those expanding concentric circles, you know, from where the stone goes in, those are big. That's a big deal. Yeah.
The other thing we spoke about, which I really think I find myself doing some things that are quite negatively, which is presuming positive intent. And we spoke about that, like, because oftentimes we go right to the negative, like, that guy's sending the email back. I emailed him 4 hours.
Yeah.
Can't get this back. And like, we're just so quick to presume negative intent. What if we, that's about us, not about them.
Yeah.
And what if we did presume positive intent? You know, like, I think it would be equal greater joy, you know. And I'm talking about presuming positive intent in people's words and actions too.
Yeah.
We don't know why they're acting that way. We don't know anything about that person. So, like, it's really important for me to, like, think more positively about those kind of things rather than go right to the negative, you know.
Yeah, and I'll share something along those lines. I have a conversation coming up in a couple of weeks with a wonderful man named Daniel Morrison. He has a company that he calls Happy Not Satisfied. He's happy with his life but not satisfied. This is like this wonderful context for living that I love. But he wrote a blog post about, well, what if everything goes right? What if everything works out? You know, and it meant the world to me when I read it. So he agreed to come and talk to me in this venue that we're having right now.
Wow.
Talk about this, but like the idea of, because I'm like he said in his blog, I can be the one that sort of like worries about all the reasons why it's not going to work, or worry about all the problems. And he goes, well, he said, well, what if I spent that time imagining, well, what if it all works out? What if everything goes the way I want it to? What if everything works out exactly like I hope it will? Like, that's a much better way to spend your time thinking.
Right.
So that conversation is coming up. If anybody happens to see this, you can look for that on our website. But I love this, Mary. You know, Daniel Morrison is a really successful man, but like that sort of idea of, like you said, assuming positive intent from others, and also in my own life, like maybe it's all going to go exactly the way I want it to, and I should not worry so much about all the what ifs.
Yeah. No, it's a terrible, like, kind of, pit you can get into, and then they build on each other, and all of a sudden you're into this big anxious mode of, what if, instead of just wait a minute, what if this goes wrong?
Yeah, and what I notice is, I mean, I've noticed this more than one time. When you start thinking funky, you'll like break a glass, or you'll, something will happen because you're thinking you're not even in the right, you're not even like aligned with the universe anymore, because you've just disconnected yourself from the all that is, with your thinking. It's not that anything inherently was not going to work out. It was going to work out, but now you did something to interrupt the flow. And I mean, I've noticed on more than one occasion, whenever I would get into like a tight negative thought loop, that I leave this time space, and I can't even handle physical reality the same way. And then a small accident like breaking a glass or something will occur. So it's like, oh, right. Come back to reality, don't go into that bad fantasy.
The idea of constantly bringing yourself back to the moment and recentering yourself. And that's part of what we're talking about, because I think we're talking about consciously being aware of, I need to give myself permission and take time to cultivate joy, find joy, put that in my life, give myself time for it. You've all said this, right? Like, you've learned to, and I feel this is something you get with time and experience, is I've learned that it's okay to let myself have joy and take time for those things. And it's not a waste of time. All those things I really love that we've been talking about. I think we need to start wrapping this up, unfortunately. So I'm going to ask each of you to say a final thing. Like, so maybe think of something, the main point that you said, or one more thing that you wanted to say that you didn't get to, or wrap up one thing or reiterate one thing. Before we do that, is there some major point that we didn't get to that anybody wanted to mention? All right, so Mary, I'll just start with you. I'll ask you to go first. Like, just anything you want to say to reiterate.
Well, one of the things that I want to say is joy begets joy. I mean, start experiencing joy and noticing it and seeking it and letting it into your life, whether it's time or space or whatever, wherever you are in the continuum of things. That when you feel joy and start to notice those things, more things bring you joy. So joy begets joy. And I really, people who are genuinely joyous or have that kind of attitude really have a lot of joy in their lives. I mean, I'm so lucky to be that way, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's great. And of course, we all are drawn to and want to be around those people. We want to be around people that are joyful, or at least trying their hardest to bring that kindness that we're talking about. Ginger, what would you like to say, wrapping up? Any final thoughts?
So I think for me, I think it's really important. Like, you think of the mantra of paying it forward. We all have an opportunity to pay forward with joy. You have your own, share it, and hope that they're going to continue, like the ripple, they're going to continue to share that joy out. And I think when we share joy, I know I get joy back. It makes my heart happy. And I think that all of us need to have joy in our life.
That's awesome. I love that. Kristen, what would you like to say?
Okay, so I have a little message around my house that helps me. It says, keeping my gratitude higher than my expectations.
Wow.
And also just I try to engage in processes of gratitude and showing appreciation, because that gives me joy. That keeps me focused in the cycle of something nice. Like this last weekend, my teachers gave us, our whole group, Sangha, lunch. Like they're in New Jersey, but they have had a spiritual holiday, and they took us out to lunch. So I am going to write a thank you note, not because it's the right thing to do and I'm a good girl, but because I feel it, because I want to say thank you for doing the thing that got us all in the same room together, having, conversation and community. So enjoy. And for me, part of how I stay with the gratitude has to do with appreciation, like if you hire somebody to come and, tell you how valuable your objects are, you have to be into something to know what its value is. And so if I show up and if I'm present, then I will experience what the value of things are. And then I have the opportunity to feel gratitude and to have joy. So, that being in the understanding of, oh yeah, this is really good. This is, like doing those programs for those kids, you have that deep rooted feeling of how good this is. And of course, then it connects you to, all the joy, because it's not just even in that case, it's not even just a now moment joy. It's a joy of knowing that what you're doing is going to provide fruit going forward. So those are the even bigger things. Like Tim, when you mentioned the part when you're teaching somebody something, that once they get that thing, now they have it and they can share it with others. So that I think the something about that kind of flow, it helps me gravitate toward those kinds of situations and people. Like there's a flow for those bigger things that matter, and I'm more likely to catch that if I'm keeping my own little happy gratitude flow thing, moving.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. I do really think a life well lived is a gift to everyone. And I would say here, like that bringing joy to the world, especially perhaps as we started with this conversation, that right now is a real gift the world needs. And it does impact, even if it impacts one person in your day, that is the beginning of that ripple that you guys have been talking about. There was a time a few years ago where I realized that I was off. And it dawned on me that I wasn't giving myself permission to read each day, which is very important to me. And I fixed that and my life got better. And so part of my real takeaway is making sure I give myself permission to do the things that bring me joy and know that that's not a waste of time. And then the other part for me is it's okay if I happen to feel a little self-conscious about expressing that joy. I need to get over that, because my expression of joy is always going to be a good thing for the world. No matter what some people might react, that's not my problem. So that's my takeaway. I have loved this conversation. I've loved the sort of great advice and heartfelt, real truths that you guys have been sharing. So thank you so much for doing that. Anybody have anything else they want to say?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Well,
for
Mary, Ginger, Kristen, you guys were absolutely wonderful. Hopefully Jackie will be back next time. Everybody, if you've watched this and you thought it was helpful, please let everybody know where you found it and share it with them. Thanks, guys. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Have a great night.